Joker's the mind killer.
When David Lynch's Dune released in December of 1984, it was received with much hate from critics and audiences around the globe. Now, as someone who has just seen the adaptation for the first time, I came out of the film with a similar perspective, but also one with positives. I was able to see through some of the obvious flaws and leave with some of the great elements which could have been misunderstood by many viewers. Don't get me wrong, the film isn't perfect in any way, and it has many issues, but it's interesting to look back on this surreal adaptation of Dune with a fresher perspective. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on David Lynch's Dune while exploring what it did well in the midst of all of its downfall. This video essay kicks off my Road to Dune series, where I create content on all of the Dune adaptations, Frank Herbert's original novel, Denis Villeneuve's filmography, and his upcoming 2021 film. During the build-up, I will also be covering any news and information surrounding the director's latest project. To stay up to date with all of these videos, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy it, remember to leave a like rating. But without further ado, let's dive into the Dune 1984 adaptation. So when Dune, the adaptation of Frank Herbert's seminal 1965 novel of the same name, released back in December of 1984, it was met with mostly similar reactions. Critics like Roger Ebert didn't like it at all, with those stating that it was a mess, incomprehensible, unstructured, and a pointless excursion into the murkier realms of one of the most confusing screenplays of all time. With multiple characters in Dune being psychic, it puts them in the unique position of being able to understand what goes on in the movie, unlike the audience. Starting in 1971, the film burned up millions when passing through the hands of Planet of the Apes producer, Chilean director Alejandro Jodorowsky, and sci-fi maven Ridley Scott before landing in the grasp of avant-noir director David Lynch. Jodorowsky's aborted 10-hour version with a Pink Floyd score is also the subject of a recent documentary. After the release of this and the upcoming 2021 release of Denis Villeneuve's film, it's worth looking back at Lynch's film, which to this day is still known as a deeply flawed piece of work that failed as a commercial enterprise, but also still managed to capture and package the essential elements of one of science fiction's deepest stories. Dune appears as the anti-Star Wars, undoing and breaking down everything George Lucas's trilogy did to make science fiction a friendly place. Star Wars: A New Hope took audiences to faraway galaxies, sure, but it also smoothed the transition into the fantastical with a simple, recognisable tale. A gentle farm worker meets a wise older man, and a cowboy gets himself a sword and goes on an adventure. It can appear almost baffling that in retrospect, that the producer who brought the rights to the Dune project in 1978, 1 year after Star Wars became a hit, could look at Herbert's novel and think that something as warm, friendly and accessible could be squeezed from its pages. Frank Herbert's book offered a densely detailed saga of a dark future where royal houses battle for control over the desert planet Arrakis and its precious resource, the spice melange. Fitting all of that tale and its moving elements into compressed movie-length form proved comically impossible for Jodorowsky. David Lynch's film also palpably suffers from numerous cuts and recuts to the final edit, which clocks in at 2 hours and 17 minutes. So instead of showing and not telling the story, the movie relies on a flurry of voiceover, breathing and exposition. Dune 1984's very language makes the movie almost impenetrable. Within the first 10 minutes, the film bombards audiences with the novel's famous phrases such as the Kwisatz Haderach, the Landsrad, Gom Jabbar, and Sardaukar with little or no context. Blaster, X-Wing, Droid, and Force are words for made-up things, but they're also words that we can very easily apply to. Dune's phrases are recited by a cast of characters thoroughly lacking in the human qualities that could have been more deeply expressed from the novel, which is also what made even Star Wars' most alien beings so endearing. In Dune, there's a collection of overly off-putting figures speaking in hyperdramatic and declarative tones. But after all of this, it probably doesn't sound like there's anything worthwhile in David Lynch's film. This is far from the truth, and having watched the movie more recently, I find myself being connected to aspects that the film pushed forward. It's certainly a different kind of sci-fi than Star Wars, which was created to comfort and entertain. Dune as a novel and as a film should want to challenge, and through its particular method in pushing the topics of religion and ecology, this may have resulted in its downfall. At the same time, some of those attempts also produced some of the film's most resonant moments. If the movie's goal was to create, like the book, a world that felt utterly alien, then Lynch and his surreal style were the right choice. With its bizarre dream sequences, which are packed with images of unborn fetuses, shimmering energies, and unsettling scenery like the industrial hell of the Harkonnen homeworld, the film's actually more closer to Stanley Kubrick's 2001 than it is with Star Wars. It seeks to put the viewer somewhere unfamiliar while hinting at a greater, hidden story. Some scenes make you question them altogether, like the Emperor's meeting with the Guild Navigator and the representation of Paul Atreides' encounter with the Jom Gabar. But these sequences also communicate the sense that something immense is occurring just beyond our vision. Science fiction is often about feeling just the right amount of lost and making us question what's above. Lynch went full out in this approach, and although it may have stumbled because of this, the director definitely kept to his vision and attempted to adapt Dune in an understandable way. It has to also be said that the film's production is masterful in itself, and it syncs with the themes of the original storyverse. Set 10,000 years in the future, everything looks appropriately streamlined. With plenty of illustrated architectural references, as Herbert does in his novel, it suggests that even as we evolve, there will be certain elements of our existence which will remain constant. Jodorowsky's New Age, bright and groovy acid trip take seem to miss this point. Even though the special effects in Dune 1984 were not particularly impressive from a technical standpoint, the miniature sets achieve a staggering sense of scale. In the scene where the Atreides fleet departs for Arrakis, dozens of already massive ships file into what looks like an ornate keyhole, instantly dwarfing them in the viewer's eye and creating a sense of ponderous motion fit for a massive interstellar spacecraft. The novel's iconic sandworms also feel similarly gargantuan on screen as they rumble out of the barren desert. It's known that before his death in 1986, Frank Herbert said that he was largely pleased with David Lynch's representation of his universe, and you can understand why. While it's hardly a cohesive experience, individual scenes are brought to life with striking power. Watching this version of Dune holds the same joy as flipping through an illustrated version of the novel, and considering the density and imagination of Herbert's world, that should count as something of an achievement. What will be intriguing to see is how Denis Villeneuve will now aim at approaching Herbert's novel after previous adaptations like the one from David Lynch. He's seen the surrealist approach and he knows of an eccentric version, but what will he do? From the trailer, I believe the director will take a more grounded approach, but one which also shows more clearly the ideas and questions Dune and science fiction fans want to see. I will be doing a lot of videos talking about his potential approach in the coming months, and it will be fascinating to see which route he eventually takes. But let me know down below what you personally thought of Dune 1984, alongside things that you find intriguing about David Lynch's particular adaptation. My next video in this Road to Dune marathon continues with the mini-series released in the year 2000. I will be watching the show over the next few weeks and creating a video that goes deep into its faithfulness and of course the particular adaptation's approach. This will be released in December, alongside much more content on the 2021 film coming over the next few months. To stay up to date with this series, along with all the latest news on Dune 2021, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like rating. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.